So thank you everyone for coming. We are going to get started. First off, I am Laura Porth, not Mary as my name says there. I am the Director of Events and Partnerships for USQ. I'm just here to moderate and funnel any questions to our two speakers today. So thank you for joining us for our USQ Plus presentation on managing mental health as we return to the pitch. Our presenters today are Rebecca, who is our risk management team lead, and Scott, who's our youth team lead. After the presentation, we will have time for a Q&A, but feel free to type in any questions in the chat. So let's get started. Rebecca and Scott, it's all yours.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks everyone for being here, and thank you for USQ for giving us this opportunity to talk about mental health and how we get reacclimated back onto the pitch and just into our everyday lives. It's an important topic to discuss, and I'm very grateful to be here with Rebecca and Laura and all you guys that we can have this conversation. So I'm looking forward to it. If anything comes up, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, Rebecca and I have some ideas and suggestions on what you should be considering or thinking about, or even maybe feeling because of all the transitions that have happened because of the pandemic. And it's gonna be a good time, and we're looking forward to it. Let's see. Oh, cool, I can share a screen.
Okay, I was about to ask if you're gonna share slides if you need me to.
Yeah. I can share, Rebecca, if that works for you.
Sure. Right.
Cool, let me find it. There we go. This looks like slides. Oh, look at that. It's got our names on it and everything. Cool. Yeah, so just to reiterate, my name's Scott, and Rebecca is joining us for this managing mental health and how we can return to the pitch. There's been a lot that we've all experienced in some way, shape, and form, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch, in our daily lives, our career, family. The pandemic has impacted us in some way, shape, and form. I think it's important that we all just kind of take a moment, be present, and see what are some things we maybe need to consider before we kind of like move forward. Things are opening up across the country, and you may be having some mixed feelings about that, and some new things that are coming up for you that maybe you've never experienced before, or are becoming more intense for you, whether it's feelings or symptoms of your own mental health. And we want to be able to help alleviate some of those anxieties or symptoms for you, and have a more honest conversation about like a very normal thing that everyone's going through. And Rebecca's going to get it kicked off with this first part of the discussion.
So one of the first suggestions is to decide what pandemic positives that you might want to hold on to. And this might seem counterintuitive or strange because the pandemic has caused a lot of grief globally. And at the same time, it may have allowed you to gain some insight into your life and what you value and what makes you happy. And so how you might figure out those positives is you can make a list of the positive things you've taken away from how different your life was over the past year. And that can be big things or small things. It can be spending time with family, or for me, I've been in touch more with friends who live in another state, and we video chatted a lot because we weren't going anywhere, and that's something I want to continue doing. It could be something as simple as just wearing more comfortable clothes, and you can prioritize it and advocate for these changes in your life.
I appreciate the optimistic mindset, Rebecca. In the face of adversity, when you reach your lowest point, we are open to the greatest change. And there's got to be some things that we got to look forward to. And values is a great place to start. What's important to you right now? Focus on those things moving forward. And a great way to do that is to stay present and set some boundaries. Shout out to Indianapolis Intensity. We kind of focus on this daily in our practices. We call it owning the moment. And this picture articulates it pretty well. Whether you got stuff going on at home, whether you got things going on at work, or you got things going on in whatever areas of your life, it gets clustered, it gets messy, it gets jumbled. There's a lot going on. An easy way for you to focus on your values and moving forward is to stay present in the moment. If you can't actively address any of those things right now, put it to the side for the moment. If you can, great. Look to problem solve, look to radically accept some of those situations. You're allowed to feel your emotions and do something about it. But if you can't at the moment, put it to the side and do what you can to enjoy your current experience, like this doggo. Doggo sees sunshine and trees. We are owning the moment. We are present. We are focused on what we're doing right now. When we are done with the moment, great. Then we can come back to some of the things that are on our plate that are making us uncomfortable or uneasy, and then we can go address those things. Another thing to keep in mind is that if the stuff in your life is becoming too overwhelming, too fast, too hard, take a break. Go enjoy the settings. Go outside. Take 5, take 10, maybe even 15. Give yourself a chance to reset, come back to the things that you need to address. It's kind of hard to do that if you're feeling overwhelmed. So give yourself the grace to take a break, come back, and then go deal with those things. And that's what we're getting at, what we're saying, right? Setting boundaries, know your limits. We're not saying don't push yourself. We're just saying be mindful of how much you are putting on your plate as you're adjusting back to everyday life.
And one of the terms Scott uses, radical acceptance. And so for those of you that don't know, this is a term that's commonly used in different types of therapy, like dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT. So it's kind of what it sounds like, meaning just accepting things that are the way they are. It doesn't mean you approve it or you like it. It just means, okay, I accept the fact, I guess, kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, I accept the fact that I can't leave my house. Do I like it? No, but it's the truth. And sometimes you have to accept the things the way that they are in order to move forward. And same can be said for, if you're advocating for a political change, you have to accept the things, there's a truth that you don't like. You have to say, okay, well, that truth or what is happening. Denying it doesn't stop it from happening. So just saying, okay, I accept that this is what is happening, and then you can look to what you can change.
Retweet. Well said, Rebecca.
Thank you.
So where do you start? Start small. This ladder is a great metaphor for how to continue to move forward. Notice that there's 2 different people with 2 different ladders. One's got more steps than the other, but they're still both going up, going to the same direction, to the same goal, to the same vision that we all want to achieve in some way, shape, and form. Maybe it's work-life balance. Maybe it's improved relationships. Maybe it's improved feelings of enjoyment and contentment in our life. Some of us just need different amounts of steps to get there. The goals still stay the same. Figure out your starting point. This is my new baseline. This is where I'm at. Think of it kind of like starting up your workout routine again. Pre-pandemic, maybe you're going 5 times a week pretty consistently for 45 minutes. You couldn't skip a beat. You kept going. Pandemic hit, boom. Gym shut down. Had to adjust your routine. Now you're less motivated. Now you're out of your routine. Now you're out of sync. And now your maxes are all off. Okay, great. We're going to hit you with some radical acceptance. Acknowledge this is your new baseline and start from where you're at. You're allowed to be upset that you're not where you used to be, but that's not going to get you any further to where you want to go. You just need to add a few extra steps to your ladder. check in with yourself. This is where I'm at and this is how I'm going to move forward. And then that's okay.
And going with that, communicate with what you're comfortable doing with your friends or with your family when you're going out. You're not gonna know, people can't know what you're feeling unless you tell them. You won't know what other people are feeling unless they tell you. And different people are gonna have different levels of what they're comfortable doing. I have some friends who are comfortable just going out, they're ready to get back to normal, and other people who are more cautious, they're more slow, or and some people might say, okay, I'm gonna go out, even if everyone's vaccinated, I'm gonna wear a mask. And you just have to talk. So you have to talk about that ahead of time, so you can let your friends know what your boundaries are or what your expectations are. And you can say whether or not you're comfortable giving a hug or a fist bump or things like that. And you can suggest plans that you're comfortable doing. Maybe you're not comfortable going to the park, but you're comfortable hanging out at your friend's house, just the two of you. And like I said, ask your friends what they're comfortable with, and that way you can make decisions together and know how your decisions can affect others. And also with that, just allow yourself to change your mind about your level of comfort. It You may build up how comfortable you are as you start doing more things, or you might read something scary in the news about variant somewhere in the country, and that might change your level of comfort. And sometimes we just don't know how comfortable we are going to be until we get there. You might say, oh, I'm less comfortable than I thought I would be, or I might say I'm more comfortable than I thought I'd be, and this is kind of surprising.
It's as if people can't read our minds, Rebecca. I love how you started off with that. We need to be able to communicate with each other, whether it's friends, families, or otherwise. We're all looking at the situation from our lens, not everyone else's lenses. Well said.
And communication goes beyond talking about what you're comfortable with as you go back out into the world.
I feel like that should just be like an everyday thing, right? Not just when there's a pandemic.
Yeah. Right. And listen to and take care of your body. When there's a large disruption in our lives, if it's good or bad, it's important to be in tune with your mind and how your body is reacting, like racing thoughts, things you're feeling in your body. So just you pay attention to how you feel before and after events. You can go out to an event and come home really happy and excited you went, or you might come home and say that was exhausting, or I pushed myself past my comfort level, and just be in tune with that. And if you can feel anxiety like in your body, just take a few deep breaths. Can be sometimes what I do is 4 seconds in, 8 seconds out, and just unclench your jaw, your shoulders, and your fist. You can start at your face and just relax muscles down your body, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your arms. And you can combat anxious negative thoughts with positive self thoughts and grounding statements. So this goes back to what a little bit Scott was talking about before with staying present. Kind of grounding yourself in the present can also help with anxiety and brushing thoughts about anxiety. And grounding statements include things you can see and touch and smell, and those just bring you back to the present moment when your mind might be taking off.
The one thing I'm going to add, Rebecca, I threw this picture in last minute. If you're having a tough time gauging the things that create distress in your life right now, and using SUDS is a great way to help you figure that out. Usually for folks that experience distress at a 7 or higher, there's panic, it's intense emotional distress, you're not thinking rationally, you're more impulsive. It's going to be harder for you to deal with things in a rational way. You're going to be very emotional minded. And there's specific techniques and strategies to help you get your numbers down. That way you can proceed mindfully, be more present, and make a more rational decision. Breathing's a great way to do that. Rebecca mentioned that. And progressive muscle relaxation is a great way to do that. And focusing on your senses are all great ways to do that. It doesn't necessarily deal with the issue of why that distress was there in the first place, but it helps you get your numbers down so you can deal with it effectively.
Exactly.
I think this is me, Rebecca. I can't remember.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. So, what do we mean by changing your relationship with your emotions? As someone that has their own battle with not relationships, with emotions, emotions are icky and gross, and you have to be vulnerable and you have to share your feelings, and people have to know about your feelings in order how to act with you. But in a way, they can be helpful. They provide us information. We don't necessarily need to act on all of our emotions, but they can help guide us on what we would like to do and consider. And I think something that's really important to recognize is that emotions have a purpose. If you're feeling sad about something and it makes sense, great, go be sad. Go have a good cry. There is a reason why that's there in the first place. If you're angry, great, go be angry. You're allowed to be mad about certain things. You're allowed to be mad that a year's worth plus of things have changed in your life. The question I will ask you in regards to your relationship with emotions is your emotion being effective? I will never tell you it's good. I will never tell you it's bad. I will ask you, is your emotional response effective to your current situation? If it's not, then we want to have a different conversation. Are we checking the facts of all the things going on in your situation, or just the ones that apply to your feelings? Are you looking at this from all angles? Can you think dialectically? Can you make room for gray instead of just black and white? How could someone else look at this situation? Is this serving a purpose? If it is, great. Be sad, be angry, feel the emotion. But once it's done being effective, then I'm going to encourage you to go do something else. This might be me too.
Yeah.
Cool. Self-care. I feel like most folks have heard this term in one way, shape, and form, and I'm going to help break it down on why it's important. It's not just enough to say, did you get enough sleep? Did you get any sleep? Have you eaten anything today? Have you drinking any water today? Why is that relevant? Why is that important? We're talking about vulnerability factors. There is something to be said about hangry. It's harder to deal with frustration and distress and anxiety on an empty stomach and on 2 hours of sleep. And you just had a fight with your partner and work isn't going the way that you dealt with it. You are now dealing with another distressful situation, and now it's going to blow up in your face. I'm not saying that having a full belly and a perfect night's sleep and all of your relationships are going well will make the distressful thing not distressful. I am saying it will make it easier for you to deal with it. You are setting yourself up for success by making sure your ADLs and your other things are in check. That's why self-care is important. Another thing to keep in mind in regards to self-care is as you're adjusting to going back to whatever you want your life to be kind to yourself and cut yourself some slack. No one's putting any expectations on you to get back to the expectations that you want for yourself other than yourself. So I'd encourage you to give yourself grace and be patient. It takes time to get to where you want to be with the things, not through the intensity of a 1-2 day kind of thing, but the consistency of building habits over time. And again, with the boundaries on how much distressful content you are consuming. Stay informed within whatever boundaries you can handle.
You know, it's a 24-hour news cycle. It's like you can hear about terrible events nonstop and details about all these terrible events. And it can really affect your mood and overall mental health and can make you more vulnerable. And with this vulnerability chain, if you have increased stress and anxiety and just unhappiness from all the news, you might be more likely to have a fight with your partner or something, because that's just, you know, one more thing that's just kind of cutting away at your ability just to handle emotions and conflict and things like that. So, like Scott said, you can stay informed, but if you notice that it's really affecting your mental health and your ability to get things done in your life, then you can cut back and just, um, stay informed, but you don't consume yourself in it and just be buried in it, because that can make it harder just to do everything in life.
Becca, you are absolutely crushing it.
You too. Okay. Yep, this one is me. So another another suggestion is sh- to decrease your vulnerability to painful emotions and increase your baseline of happiness. This is something that's a fundamental part of DBT and other therapies. And like we've talked about, sometimes emotions can be really overwhelming and make us feel reactive or out of control. And these emotions have a purpose, as we've talked about, but the intense emotions can make it harder to function in our daily lives and do work, take care of family, get schoolwork done, and things like that. And so, how? That's, a big question of, how can we reduce our vulnerability? Because that's be a really difficult task. And the answer is emotion regulation. So, the first step of that is to practice naming your emotions. This can kind of seem like simple or something you might say to a kid of like, oh, emotions are happy, sad, angry, things like that. But there are different levels and intensity to emotions. And, like the words annoyed, pissed off, angry, furious, they're all related to each other, but they convey different intensity. So you might say this person is annoying me versus this person is making me furious. Those are similar, but they're different. And you can just pay attention to where you're feeling these emotions in your body. So if you feel anxious about going out, you might feel your chest being tight or your rapid heartbeat, and find ways to decrease the intensity. So as we talked about before, it can be like relaxing your muscles, deep breaths. Sometimes I might splash cool water on my face and just things like that. And so those won't take away the difficult emotions, but they'll make them less intense. Can make them less intense, so you can just take the next step in your day.
That last part Rebecca said really ties into changing your relationship with emotions. We need to be able to make room for all of the emotions. And we totally empathize with the idea that there can be too much of one or two particular emotions, maybe several at a time. And we get that. You need a break from that. We still need to make room for all of the emotions. And the reason you do that is because each emotion needs to be treated differently. You're not going to treat anger the same way you're going to treat grief, the same way you treat envy and guilt, and vice versa.
Yeah, and sometimes it makes sense to feel emotions intensely, like grief. You're gonna feel that intensely, especially at first when you first start grieving someone. So it's not, don't these are just tools to have in your pocket, not necessarily to use all the time.
Loneliness, man, has it been rough for us to interact as human beings and just be normal social creatures? And I'm not going to lie, it sucked. And this is me saying it's okay to feel things. We haven't had a lot of interaction lately. We've had to adjust and accommodate how we interact. Having said that, again, we're going to use radical acceptance. Okay, I can't see everyone that I've wanted to see. Things are opening up. How can I figure out how to re-engage with people, or just deal with the feelings that other people got stuff going on and I may need to spend some time by myself for a while? Something that I'll use a little self-disclosure. Something that I've noticed about myself when the pandemic hit was I had to reach out to people. Quidditch, you go to practice, everyone's there. You don't have to start conversations. You're all there. Everyone just starts talking. Once practice got taken away, it's like, oh, now I have to actually initiate conversation. That's tough, especially when you got other things going on and you don't have a structured activity. So it may require some more intentional effort for you to reach out first to stay connected, and vice versa. You definitely want to be mindful of how one-sided some of your relationships are, but it definitely needs to go both ways when the structured activities are no longer in place. You also want to keep in mind, who are you outside of your relationships? What makes you feel confident? What makes you feel creative? What boosts your self-esteem? What are your strengths? Go do some of those things. Yes, some of those could have been within the social constructs of quidditch or work or other sports and other things. How can you use some of those things within your own space? That way you can start to remember, hey, I am good at this, or hey, I feel great when I do XYZ thing. Some of us may need to revisit our ikigai, our reason for being, and it can be broken down to these 4 circles: things that we love, things that we're good at, things we want to get paid to do, and things the world needs. And the gist of it is, you can have a bunch of different things in each of these circles and find balance. You can also find a couple of things right smack dab in the middle that touch all the criteria. There's no right or wrong. But the gist of it is, if you're having a tough time with loneliness right now, I'm going to encourage you to be present on some of these things in your life right now. You're probably missing a couple of these. When was the last time you did something that you love? When was the last time you felt like you were good at something? Go find those things. And if you don't know what those things are, great. Go figure them out. Go try some stuff. You got time to find things to get good at stuff. Is this me too?
Yeah, and this is
Yeah.
our last numbered suggestion.
This one's tough because I also struggle with this. What you can and can't control. And the gist of it is, you can control your reaction to things. You can't control your environment. You can control your assumptions. You can control your beliefs. You can control your thinking and your emotions and your behaviors. That's all within your control. And if you're just saying you're going to act on your emotion and it makes sense to you, great, go for it. If you're saying that maybe my actions and my beliefs and my thinking is not the most effective thing for me, maybe I need to consider how I'm looking at the situation. This is where dialectical thinking becomes really, really important, as well as radical acceptance. Looking at something completely without judgment of yourself, others, and the situation itself. Just take it at face value for what it is and nothing more. It alleviates a lot of frustration when you can just look at a situation without throwing all these unnecessary adjectives onto it. Acknowledging this situation, some of it was in our control, some of it's not. That's just the reality. We need to take a moment and accept that is part of it. What can I do with this moment that is here? Before you can get to that place of radical acceptance, you do need to validate the emotional experience first. If you're finding yourself still angry about something in the past, okay, we need to heal that wound before you can move forward. Once you've healed the anger, then it's easier for you to radically accept and move on and move forward.
And these are some links just to learn more. I don't know if we can share the slides. We can to this links to learn more about mindfulness and emotion regulation. A couple of these are videos. The number 2 and number 3, they're videos on just explaining a little bit more about DBT and mindfulness and some of the words we use, like emotion regulation.
The key to any of this stuff, and some of you all do this already without even calling it therapy, but the key of it is repetition and consistency over time.
And these are some sources on coping with stress. From the National Institute of Mental Health made some shareable resources they can promote on your own social media pages about coping with stress. And they also have a few other links where experts in the field talk about managing stress. The CDC also has some suggestions on coping with stress, and UCSF also has advice on dealing with reentry anxiety, and touches on some of the things that we talked about.
This last resource slide is, if you are interested in thinking you need some guidance or support, there are therapists out there. This is just some language and terminology to look for if you're considering that type of service or person. And then obviously I one of the things I hear as a therapist is, how much is this going to cost and things like that. So there are sliding scale reduced cost therapists out there. This is a particular website to find them at OpenPath. Psychology Today is just a generic database for psychology topics and discussions, as well as finding therapists. And maybe you're not feeling the whole face-to-face thing, and there is telehealth options out there. And as a therapist, I think it's just worth sharing that therapy can be used for a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be about rehashing your unresolved trauma. It could just be simply, okay, my family's wanting to have a cookout next week and I don't know how I feel about it. How do I plan for this thing? That's a normal thing everyone's contemplating, thinking about in this whole country. That is half the therapy, if you will, is figuring out how to navigate everyday affairs. And that's a totally appropriate, normal conversation to have with the therapist.
Yeah, and just figuring out, and we talked about increasing your baseline of happiness. That part of therapy doesn't necessarily mean you've had to have some sort of traumatic event that you're trying to recover from, but just increasing your happiness, and can also help. Therapy can also just help you improve your relationships with other people, and or how you just connect to the world.
Oh, I lied. There's one more.
Yeah, these are just good to talk about, good for people to know about. Crisis support lines. They're generally available 24/7. Crisis text line is newer than some of the other ones. You can actually just text someone if you don't feel like talking to someone on the phone.
We're definitely not saying you need to be the experts in your friend or family's crisis. There are people there that can be there in a pinch if the need is there.
Yeah, and sometimes a friend or family member have a crisis that's beyond your capability to support, and you can direct them to a crisis support line, or you could call it yourself and say, how do I help this person in my life? What should I do, or what advice can I give them?
Cool. As far as Rebecca and I's presentation goes, that's what we have for you all. And I am up for questions and other shenanigans.
Yes, if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or type in the chat, and we will make sure to get those answered for you.
Rebecca says hello. Hi, Rebecca.
Oh yeah, I was just responding to someone saying good evening earlier. So
Don't mind me. I am using stupidity to deal with silence.
Hi, Amy. Do you have a question?
Hi, I'm Amy. And yeah, I do have a question. So I think with Quidditch starting up, like for MLQ, it's already started, USQ starting. And I know that this is probably a passion of people that are watching. And during the pandemic, we had a lot of hope that the seasons might get started again, and then they didn't. And so it was kind of hard to get your motivation up for getting in shape or practicing, or even like some hopes for it even happening. And now it is happening. And I think some people with this hobby or their other hobbies might be having a hard time getting back into those hobbies, finding motivation to start them, finding some self-doubt if they're realizing they're not as good as they were at the beginning of the pandemic. And I'm wondering if you have any tips to help combat that.
Rebecca, I'm happy to chime in on that.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, great question, by the way, Amy. Thank you for being here with us. I think the thing that I tend to fall back on is my why, the why I got into this thing in the first place. And as someone that currently plays for an MLQ team and a USQ team that likes to play at a high level, I've faced my share of adversity and challenges with this pandemic, similar to other folks. Why did I get into this in the first place? It was cool. It was fun. It was different. I was never worried about competing at a high level or being good. I was just happy that I got to play this game and meet some dope people along the way. And what came along was, oh, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, and it's fun to compete at a high level and stuff like that. So those came after the fact. I think if I was encouraging anyone wanting to get back into the things that they love most, really dig deep into why did you even get into that in the first place? And not just the why, but like start talking about it, manifesting it out into the open, talk about it out loud. Because then what you'll start to find and hear in yourself is like, man, that felt good when I got into it. And then you start to get excited, and then you're like, okay, I think I can see myself getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions for today? Well, I'm going to say, since no one has raised their hand, that this concludes our presentation for today. I know Scott and Rebecca, if you want to put your emails, if you're open to people reaching out to you, feel free to reach out and ask them any questions. As USQ staff, we are always here for you. And yeah, thank you everybody for joining, and don't go away until Scott and Rebecca, there they are, their emails. So yes, feel free to reach out with any questions. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I totally know my email address. As part of the risk management team, we're hopeful for this next season. Just keeping our eyes out on infection numbers, vaccination rates. I'm really hopeful. So be really nice to see people at the next tournaments and nationals. And nationals is the only time of year I get to see some of my friends. So it's hoping for everything's. I'm hoping that everything's gonna turn around and be good.
That sounds like something to look forward to, Rebecca.
Yeah.
And that's one of the two things I share with any one of my clients if they want to better manage their mental health. You got to have hope, and you got to have resilience, the ability to bounce back. And if there's a couple things this Quidditch community has, it's definitely resilience and hope.
Great last words to leave off on. All right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see everybody soon.
Take care.
Right.